this is Angela from Natural Living Alchemy. Welcome to my channel. In today's video, we are going to be doing another Stock the Pantry recipe where we are going to be making brown sugar of all things. So let's talk about what brown sugar is, and then you will see how easy it is to make. All you're going to need to make this recipe is 2 ingredients: granulated sugar and molasses. So for the sugar, I would stick with granulated or caster sugar if possible. Other sugars might work, but I haven't really tried them myself. So what is brown sugar exactly? Well, it is refined sugar with added molasses. And it's actually the molasses that gives brown sugar its signature color. Light brown sugar is most commonly used in baking, and typically light brown sugar contains approximately 3% molasses by weight. Now, dark brown sugar contains approximately 7% molasses by weight. Now, you could just follow those percentages, but I will give you amounts that you can measure out in just a second. So, light brown sugar would be anywhere from half a tablespoon to 1.5 tablespoons of molasses, and dark brown sugar would be a tablespoon and a half all the way up to a 1/4 cup of molasses. Now, I personally think that the large range in these suggested amounts really just comes out to what type of molasses you are using, because they are not all created equally. So what is molasses then? Well, it's a liquid sweetener that is a byproduct of the sugar refining process. It can come from sugar cane or sugar beets. And molasses is rich in vitamins and minerals. So you are not wanting to use blackstrap molasses if possible, because that is unsweetened and it has a bitter flavor. But if that is all that you have, definitely give it a try and just see if you like the end result. So we have 4 different types of molasses. I'm not sure. Anyway, there's 4 different kinds that you can choose from. So we have light, and this is the lightest in color and the sweetest in flavor, as it contains the highest amount of sugar of all of the molasses, and it is most often used in baking. Dark molasses is darker in color and less sweet, and it is commonly used in baking where bolder flavors are desired, such as when making gingerbread. We have blackstrap molasses, which is the darkest in color, the least sweet, and it has that bitter flavor like I just mentioned. And again, this is not the type that we're going to recommend that you use for this recipe, but if that's all you have, give it a try still. And lastly, we have unsulfured molasses, and this is molasses that has been produced without the use of sulfur dioxide, which is used as a preservative. I'm going to invite you to check out the description box below this video, and in there you're going to find a link to the full written blog article that has all of this and more in writing in case you want to check that out later. Now, our 2 ingredients, like I told you at the beginning of this video, are just regular granulated sugar, and my molasses is calling itself fancy. This is our unsulfured type of molasses, and actually on the side there's a little flavor scale, and this is pretty much one of the sweeter ones that you can get. So those are definitely things that you want to take into consideration. So for our equipment, we're going to need a container so that we can store everything in later. We're going to need some just measuring cups here so that we can get our sugar and our molasses measured out. You're going to need a bowl to mix everything in. I like just a little spatula just so I can make sure that I get all of my molasses out of my container. And you're going to need some things to stir. So I have a whisk, I have a fork, I have a spoon, and I have clean hands. Now, I will probably use all 4 of those things when it comes to measuring this up. You can definitely do this recipe in a stand mixer. I just find this way it's just as easy to do, and I didn't have to drag my mixer down from on top of my cupboard. Okay, so what we are going to do to start off with is I'm just making a small amount. So I'm just going to measure out 1 cup of my granulated sugar. Okay, well, we have that much in, so just over a cup. Now, before I add my molasses in, I do like to take my whisk and then just kind of break up any larger clumps of sugar that might be in here. Okay, so next we're going to measure out our molasses. Now, I gave you a whole large range, all the way from half a tablespoon to a quarter of a cup of molasses, depending on how dark you're wanting your brown sugar. So the amount that I prefer to do is every 1 cup of sugar, I put 1.5 tablespoons of my molasses in there. And then you just want to add your molasses directly into your bowl with your sugar. And now you're going to take your whisk, whatever it is that you're wanting to mix in, and you're going to mix everything until it is thoroughly combined. So how I like to start this off is just by kind of just whisking all of this in here, and then just kind of grabbing my other tools just to get all of this sugar and this molasses incorporated. Now, this is going to take a little bit of just elbow grease because we are wanting to get this thick, sticky substance to get mixed in well and thoroughly with our granulated sugar. So it will take a couple minutes, but it will get there. Just be sure that you're cleaning out your whisk every so often so that all the molasses doesn't just hide out in there. You can take your fork, mush it in. You can take your spoon, mush all of the pieces of the molasses in. However you want to get this mixed in is exactly what you need to do. Once we get to kind of about this type of consistency where we can still see large pieces of our molasses in here, that's when I like to switch from my fork and my whisk and to start using my spoon. So what I'll do is I will take these larger chunks and just kind of push my spoon against them just to help break it up. And then from this point, you can see that it is mixed up even more. A lot more of those larger chunks have been incorporated. If you want, you can still go with your spoon. It's usually around this time that I like to go in with clean hands and just kind of just mush everything together and just to mix it up. So just kind of like this. And then I'll just take some of the chunks of the molasses in here and then just kind of squish them with my thumb to get them mixed into the sugar. Perfect. So then everything will eventually just get all nicely mixed in and you now have brown sugar. Perfect. Let me just go wash my hand and then we are going to package this up. So once everything is nicely mixed in, you're just going to grab a container of some sort. Now, ideally, you would want to use a non-transparent container that is going to help limit the sugar's exposure to air and any drying conditions. Mine is clear glass. Use what you have. All right? And just like regular brown sugar, because that's exactly what we made, you could consider putting like a piece of bread in here or one of those brown sugar keepers, and that's going to help it from getting all dried out. And then we will just put our lid on and we will be good for up to 6 months. So we have now reached the notes and substitutions portion of this video, where I tell you other notes I find important and things that you might want to consider substituting based on what your needs are. First off, feel free to adjust that amount of molasses to suit your needs. If you have nowhere that you don't know where you want to start small, and then you can always add more. It's going to get a little bit complicated if you put too much molasses in and then now you have to add more sugar to kind of balance it out, and you're never really going to know how much of each ingredient is in there when you go to make it again. So just start on the lower end and add more. That's kind of how I've determined that tablespoon and a half for every 1 cup is a really good amount for my kitchen and what I require. Store-bought brown sugar weighs more than granulated sugar, but once you add the molasses in there, that weight difference will be so minuscule, so you will be able to substitute homemade brown sugar to store-bought brown sugar 1-to-1 in any recipe. You could consider adding maybe a vanilla extract or some spices to just help give it a unique flavor if that's what you're wanting to do too. Using too much molasses is going to result in an overly moist brown sugar, so always start with less and then just gradually add in more. You could consider adding a moisture retainer to the container, such as a slice of bread, and just replacing that as needed, just so that your brown sugar always stays as fresh as possible. If you don't have molasses, can you still do this recipe? Well, if you didn't have the molasses, I don't see why you couldn't use something like maple syrup, honey, or even agave nectar as your liquid sweetener portion to mix in with your granulated sugar. Now, the flavor profile would be different, but in a pinch, I don't see why it wouldn't work. Just start by mixing up a small batch and see how it goes. You might like it, and that might be your preferred recipe for brown sugar from now on. Now, what I'm thinking is you could definitely get creative with this by adding in some of those different spice or maybe a little bit of vanilla when you're mixing everything up, and then you will definitely have a just deliciously unique brown sugar that makes your baked goods potentially stand out against a crowd. Anyway, that is how simple it is to make your own brown sugar. And why don't you go ahead, comment down below and let me know, are there any other recipes along this line that you are interested in making? I do have a powdered sugar recipe that I plan on sharing in the near future, as well as how to make some of your own different types of flour, like self-rising or cake. Anyways, don't forget to hit the like button if you've liked this video and share it with anyone else who you think might enjoy it. Consider subscribing to the channel so that we can spend more time together and that you don't miss future videos. But I just want to say thanks for stopping by today, and I'll see you next time.